Mr. Chomsky, thanks a lot for these minutes with the Uruguayan public television.
Glad to be with you.
Why did you decide to come to Uruguay?
Well, I was invited to meet Pepe Mujica. That's an invitation I could not refuse. The most exciting, important political figure in the world today, I think.
All right, and what can you say about the process, the political process in Uruguay? What information do you have about what these 12 years of left-wing governments in Uruguay?
Well, I think Uruguay rates consistently as the country of Latin America with the highest level of democratic participation, of support for democracy, of social progress. It's avoided the terrible traps of severe corruption that have mired other countries in disaster situations. It's a kind of beacon of light on the continent.
You have been very critical with the process of the left-wing governments in South America in the past 15, 17 years. What do you think happened?
Actually, that's not quite true. I think they've made very considerable progress, progress that I suspect is permanent and will be a basis for moving on. So they've succeeded in very sharply reducing poverty and increasing literacy, access to education, social organization. These are all major achievements in the international sphere. President Lula in particular became, in my opinion, the most significant international leader in world affairs. The formation of BRICS, other initiatives were extremely important. The countries of South America have finally, after 500 years, separated themselves from imperial domination to a significant degree. It's a major achievement. The IMF, which is basically the U.S. Treasury Department, has been virtually expelled. American military bases are gone. These are all significant achievements. There were failures. One failure was the inability to avoid the plague of corruption, which is a disease that undermines significant progress. The other was an economic failure to diversify the economies. It was extremely tempting to fall into the trap of rising commodity prices due to primarily the Chinese development, and that means also importing cheap Chinese manufactured goods, which undermine manufacturing industry. This has led to severe difficulties in most, not all, of the countries.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think of present political situation of ex-President Lula da Silva in Brazil? The present political situation of Lula and Brazil?
Well, I think there are charges against Lula. I mean, I'm not in a position to judge them. What has been reported seems to be wrong, but nothing like, not in the least justifying the harshness of the sentencing that's been discussed. I suspect it's largely an effort to keep him from participation in the political system. It's pretty obvious across the board that he's the most popular political figure in the country, would probably win an election. The removal of Dilma Rousseff, I think, was basically a coup. There were no significant charges against her. Those who brought the charges were far more culpable than she was in any respect. These are very dangerous developments, I think, and the importance of Brazil, its power in the continent, makes these, magnifies the impact of these developments.
Okay, let's go to the States, to the administration of Donald Trump. You talked about the dangers of an atomic war, the dangers of climate change. Are those the main worries now?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the Trump administration is the most dangerous government in the world today. It's on the issue of climate change, which is a crucial existential issue. If we don't deal with it quickly, it's going to be disastrous for the world. And under Trump, under the Republicans, because they're unified in this, it's not just Trump, they have isolated the United States from essentially the rest of the world. Well, the rest of the world is attempting to do at least something to deal with the crisis. The United States is now committed not only to not assisting, but to actually making the racing towards the precipice as quickly as possible, magnifying the crisis. This is a shocking development. There are increasing threats of nuclear war. Tensions are rising, particularly on the Russian border. Notice the Russian border, not the Mexican border. There are reasons for that, which go back to the Clinton administration, expansion of NATO, and so on. This is all expanding under Trump. He's also, the administration is extremely unpredictable, so you don't know what they're going to do next, which is very dangerous in a war, in a world in which hair-trigger decisions could set off terminal disaster. That's why, for example, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, which is the main monitor of the situation, the global situation, they have a famous doomsday clock where they estimate the distance to midnight. Prior to Trump, it was already 3 minutes to midnight, which is the closest it's been. Midnight means terminal disaster. It's the closest it's been since 1953, when the United States and Russia exploded hydrogen bombs. As soon as Trump came in, they moved it even closer to midnight, 2.5 minutes. That's the closest it's been since the worst moments of the Cold War. That's an indication of the estimate by sober, serious, conservative analysts of the threats that's posed by this administration. There are also severe domestic threats. Mm-hmm. Well, right now there's a lot of talk about the health care program, which is a total disaster. That'll be a monstrous impact on the U.S. population. But case after case, the administration, behind the kind of bluster and antics of the political figure nominally in charge, they're pressing through very savage legislations that harm working people, human rights, civil rights, threatening to undermine the slim basis for barriers against the next financial crisis and so on. It's a very dangerous administration.
And what can people do with this combination of politics and organizations worldwide, like big companies who are setting the agenda and taking us to this place?
I think they can. There are many opportunities to organize and act to reverse these processes and to introduce a much more a modified form of state capitalism, which will be have softer edges, will deal with the major problems, and then to go beyond to create a much more democratic and free system. I think all of these options are possible, and we see it very clearly. So in the United States and England, for example, the Sanders campaign and the Corbyn campaign both demonstrate dramatically that even without any support from corporate power, private wealth, the political establishment, the media, it's still possible to organize progressive popular forces to come to the fore and come very close to gaining the political power that will enable them to modify, reverse the dangerous tendencies and to move forward.
You have also been very critical with the way the elections are defined, right? And how the parties and the big companies define the winner of the election, for example, in the States, right?
Well, there's a lot of flaws with the formal democratic process, but even within that framework, first of all, these flaws are not graven in stone. They can be modified and overcome. But even within them, there's a lot that can be done. We see that in these two campaigns. Sanders, for example, he broke with over a century of American political history by showing that it is possible to gain political power, which he would have done if it hadn't been for the machinations of the party managers, even without support from any of the establishment structures, corporate wealth, media, bureaucracy, and so on. And he's now by far the most popular political figure in the country. And the groups that have grown out of the Sanders campaign are now, many of them, doing very significant work, which could change things in very positive ways. And that's not the limit. I mean, Sanders is basically a New Deal liberal Democrat, but you can go well beyond that.
You talked about corruption. Isn't corruption an important part of the way the system works now? How can we fight corruption, the citizens? Boycotts? What can we do?
Well, I think Uruguay showed a way. It is not mired in the same corrupt swamp as the other countries. Can be done. It's a matter of, these are matters of choice, not physical law.
Okay, thanks a lot for these minutes with Uruguay and Public Television, Mr. Chomsky.
Thank you.